On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks regular season is over. They will face the Clippers in the first round. So what are the biggest questions that the Mavs need to answer against the Clippers? We'll talk about all that and talk about the West standings on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. But the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform, leave a 5-star review, like the video on YouTube, and comment anything below. Let me know in the comment section, what's your biggest question for Mavs versus Clippers? Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I'll admit, Reggie has a competitive side and is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on a classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Joining me as always on a Sunday going into Monday from 105.3 The Fan. What you got for me, Reggie Adetula?
In the words of the great Derek Harper, it's springtime, it's playoff time, it's the best time of year.
Oh, it's there, it's ready. Hello, friends. The Masters are going on. We've also got NBA basketball, and now we have the West standing set. We have the playoff setting set. So we will talk about that, talk about our favorite matchups, talk about the Mavs path through that, as well as now we have the playoffs set up. Maybe we'll talk about the East a little bit too. But I want to start here. The Mavs, we know they're playing the Clippers, and we've known this for a couple of days now. This is not like, oh, this just happened, but Mavs season is done. Now we can finally turn our attention to the playoffs and the postseason now. And so I want to go through some of the biggest questions that I have for Mavs Clippers, and we'll discuss some of them and see how we can answer some of them a little bit here. And then later in the week, Slightly Biased and I will do a couple episodes where we will answer these questions one by one and go through, all right, this is the answer to these questions. But my first big question for the Mavericks, and we'll do a bunch of Mavericks questions first. My first big question for the Mavericks is, how much of a difference will Kyrie Irving make in this series? Because you look back at the series that the Mavs played against the Clippers before, and a lot of people will try to compare the two series, and understandable. It's the same two teams, and 44% of the minutes played in the first two series by both teams in 2020 and 2021, those players are still on the rosters. You've got your Kawhi Leonards, your Paul Georges, your Zubats, your Terrence Mann, your Luka, your Tim Hardaway Jr., your Maxi Kleber, your Dwight Powell, all those guys. So now these teams are completely different than they did 2-3 years ago. And Isaac Harris and I will talk about that on tomorrow's show, by the way. We'll tease for that. Got a lot of stuff this week. I'm excited for this week. So, but the big difference, I think, for the Mavericks from those two series to now is Kyrie Irving. I think that's the biggest, hugest. And on the other side, it's James Harden. That's the big difference with the Clippers. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But I just find this so fascinating. This is a list I tweeted out last week. The Mavs' highest non-Luka scorer in each of the games between the Mavs and Clippers in 2020 and 2021. You ready for this?
Oh, I'm so ready for this.
Okay, 2020, game 1. Tim Hardaway Jr., 18 points. Game 2, Porzingis, 23 points. Game 3, Porzingis, 34 points. That was a great game. That was a good game for him. I remember that. Game 4, Trey Burke, 25 points. Was the second leading scorer on the Mavs for that one of those games. Game 5, Tim Hardaway Jr., 19 points. Game 6, Dorian Finney-Smith, 16 points only in that game. That was the 2020 series. Now in 2021, when they went to 7 games, Hardaway Jr., 21 points. Game 2, Hardaway Jr., 28 points. Game 3, Maxi Kleber, 14 points. That was the Mavs' second leading scorer in that Game 3. Game 4, Porzingis, 18. Game 5, Hardaway, 20. Game 6, Hardaway, 23. And Game 7, Game 7, Dorian Finney-Smith, 18 points, the Mavs' second leading scorer. How big of a difference will Kyrie Irving make in this series, Reggie?
Yes. The answer is yes. The world of difference. I mean, when we get to the playoffs, right, it ends up becoming chess, right? We're doing the level of adjustments and the level of game planning that's just a whole different level, right? You have games in between, multiple days in between. In the first round and the second round, maybe you end up with like a day in between. But we are training an entire coaching staff and scouting department and whatever on a singular team. And so, the tactics of this get so much more different. And with that being the case, like you were previously going with, are you going to try and take away Luka or the others? You add a completely different dynamic, adding Luka and Kyrie, Luka or Kyrie or the others, and that shifts the way that this goes. The Clippers are like, decently, acquainted with or prepared to deal with some of those questions, but that changes the math on it. As quite literally, the math that you're talking about, Kyrie Irving is infinitely more capable of putting up 16, 14, like we're talking about a single quarter in a lot of instances with those kind of numbers. So like that changes the math incredibly. He's going to be a huge issue. And of course, as I've said many times on this podcast and elsewhere, that's why you got Kyrie Irving for. Like that's quite literally what you went and got him for.
That's like your new catchphrase.
That's right.
That's why you get Kyrie Irving.
That's right.
This is a huge series for Kyrie too, and a lot of people are going to pose this as the Luka revenge series, which obviously it is. This could be looked at, in future years as, remember Jordan had to get through the Bulls, or Jordan had to get through the Pistons. Remember that LeBron had to get through the Celtics in order to get to the promised land, like to get to the finals and to win. Luka could have to get through the Clippers because it's been 2 series and the Mavs got beat in both those series, but those series were the Clippers were such overwhelming favorites, and the Mavericks took them to 6 games and to 7 games in those series that it looked at as a win for the Mavericks. It was a moral win, 100%. Even if you don't believe in moral victories. I believe that it was, considering the roster and all that. So now enter Kyrie. So it's definitely going to be some kind of revenge series for Luka. But look at Kyrie's side of it, and that's why I'm focusing on him today, is that he's going to be the big difference, because Jalen Brunson was a non-factor in those Clippers series before. Right. Just a non-factor at all. Like he didn't play very much. He was not one of the second leading scorers in any of the games that we mentioned. Like he was not the same type of player that he is today. Obviously, he's an insane MVP candidate right now, which is wild.
Sure. Yeah.
Kyrie also, though, last 3 years that he's been in the playoffs, it was 2022 for Brooklyn. They got swept in 4 games. 2021 for Brooklyn, they won 1 series and they lost the other. And 2019 for Boston, they won 1 series and lost in the second round. Kyrie in those 3 playoff series, 3 playoff seasons, 22 points a game on just about 43% shooting, 35% from 3, took like 4 threes, like 2 turnovers a game. It's just not a great Kyrie showing in there. Right. And I think he has a lot to prove in this. And I think that this series with Kyrie now next to Luka, with what Kyrie has to prove, I think is building up to be a really big series for Kyrie to really step up, especially with all this rest that he was very excited about getting. He was very excited about getting this week.
Right. That's a great instance to remind you. 32 years old, a little bit different, right? But no, I honestly had not thought of it this way, and I feel like a lot of people hadn't thought of it, like the legacy portions of it. And look, he's still playing. It kind of gets to a weird place when we start talking about legacy when folks are still actively competing. However, like
LeBron's legacy.
That's right. But I mean, it is fair. It's easy to forget that because it felt like, all right, we don't have to talk about this dude in the playoffs after that one shot early on in his career. But no, like there is a reason to maybe ask and look at the ways in which Kyrie plays in the postseason. And so I imagine for him, a personal challenge for him, if nothing else, this is going to be really interesting, an opportunity to step up and again, display his wares as, a very, very good player in the history of this league.
Yeah, and you look at the difference between when Kyrie played for Brooklyn and Boston in the playoffs. About 22 points a game. The efficiency was not necessarily there shooting wise. You look at the last 2 playoff years he played for Cleveland. They won the finals in 2016 and they went to the finals in 2017. He averaged about 26 points a game, shot, about 47% from the field, like much better efficiency. He's built to play next to a star like Luka. And Kevin Durant just is not that same type of player. He's not the same type of playmaker that when he played in Brooklyn. And so I don't really compare those 2. But I'm really excited to see how Kyrie looks in a playoff series next to Luka Doncic, and especially against the Clippers, who in the past have guarded Luka by, all right, we're going to take away the pass and just let you go one-on-one. Okay. Kyrie can do the same thing. So you go one-on-one with him. Who's going to pick him up? What's he going to do there? Kyrie against the Clippers. He only played 2 games this season, but he averaged 26.5 points. They went 1-on-1 in the 2 games that Kyrie did play. The 1 game that he missed, the Mavs lost that game. And he shot really well. He shot 50% from 3 on 16 threes in those 2 games, by the way, when he played. And yeah, I'm just really fascinated to see how Kyrie looks against the Clippers. And I think he could be the real like swing piece for the Mavericks in that. And so coming up, let's talk about a couple more Mavs things. And then I got some Clippers questions. What are the big questions about the Clippers going into this playoff series? We'll talk about all that and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has all the tickets and things that you need to go and have some fun. Go have some fun. Go to an event. It's always so much better to go to an event. I always love going to Mavs games and being at Mavs games, much better than watching on TV. Although shout out to Mark Followell and Jeff Skinwade and Derek Harper and Devin Harris, always making it fun there. But this weekend, I went to an FC Dallas match and enjoyed myself fully and got to use Game Time for it. The tickets were much cheaper than if I went on a different site. I really enjoyed that. I love that I got to see my view from my seat right there. They have the all-in pricing, so I toggled the little check thing and it showed me exactly what I was going to pay at checkout at the beginning instead of going through all the stuff and finding all the fees and all that. Love Game Time. I use it all the time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Not just for sports. I've used it for musicals in the past, plays. I've used it for comedy. I've used it for all kinds of things. Go check out Game Time today. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Monopoly Go game. If you are somebody that likes mobile games, I have an announcement for you. I've been checking out the leaderboards every day. We've been checking out, keeping our eyes on the scores, on the standings and all that. And we're finally back on top. That's right. I'm obviously talking about Monopoly Go. You've heard about it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on the classic Monopoly game, but you can play it anywhere, anytime. And you can play it with friends or you can play it by yourself. You don't have to. It's the hardest thing about Monopoly, I feel like, is finding people to play with you sometimes. And if you are having a hard time with that, you can go ahead and download the Monopoly Go from Vegas to Camelot to the moon. Hold on. To the moon? There's a Monopoly board on the moon. I'm intrigued now. But my favorite part is the leaderboards where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So get yourself on the charts. Download the Monopoly Go game now free on the App Store or Google Play. Again, download the Monopoly Go app on the App Store or Google Play.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. We appreciate each and every one of you for checking in on the show. We are a 5-day-a-week plus Dallas Mavericks podcast. Myself and Reggie hosted on Monday, slightly biased in me on the post games. We got Dana Larson every week coming in. She'll be in this week as well. This week is packed full with tons of Dallas Mavericks coverage for the Clipper series. Darian Vaziri and I will be doing a 2-part episode where I ask him Mavs questions and he asks me, or I ask him Clippers questions. He asked me Mavs questions. There it is. On 2 different episodes. So tons of stuff on here. Subscribe on YouTube where we just hit 35,000 subscribers. Thank you for that. And on the podcast as well. Love everybody that listens on the podcast, whether you're walking, whether you're in the gym, whether you're doing whatever you want on the beach. I don't know what you're doing right now.
Good save.
Could be doing anything at the laundromat.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, Reggie. We've been talking about Kyrie Irving and how he's just such a big swing piece for this Clippers series. Right. The other thing that I'm curious about, and this is a Mavs Clippers combo question: will the Mavs be able to stay big in this series? Because they've seen a lot of success playing Gafford. Not sure about Lively's. I'm not sure about his status, not sure about his injury status. I'm sure if he could play that he would. I think I would assume that about him in this. We're thinking about it because he was out for the injury, but then also his mother just passed away. We talked about that the other day. Right. Definitely, a terrible thing. And so we're all kind of like waiting on, all right, what's going to happen with him? Is he going to play? What's the decision on him, both because of injury and because of personal reasons? And it's completely understandable. But for the Mavericks, are they going to be able to stay big? And I think that's a huge question for them against this Clippers team.
Yeah, especially seeing as that particular aspect or question factored in a great deal when they played the Clippers in those other 2 series, right? The ways in which going small, trying to draw people out of places, and then the ways in which that allowed the Clippers to use, their Swiss Army knives. Although Swiss Army knife is a funny thing to call someone because it inherently means that like you're not really great at any of these tools necessarily. But you have right, like
that little knife on the Swiss Army. That's not a good knife. That like
no, it's not like the little scissors are
usually pretty good.
There you go. Fair enough. But I feel like the Swiss Army knives plus when you talk about Paul George, you talk about Kawhi Leonard, like the ways in which that they were able to use that size there. If you have the bigs, if you're able to neutralize Ivica Zubac in a whole nother way, right? Like, I think that shifts the way that this thing goes. So no, absolutely, that's going to be something that matters. And even that's inside the series. Outside of the series, we've seen the ways in which when they're able to go big, it really, I mean, it's the focus of what they've done. It's the focus of their change since the trade deadline was adding that size. And so if that is like your prime asset, you would hope that when it comes down to the big minutes in the postseason, you have that available to you to utilize.
I think the big thing is so fascinating because you look at Luka, and he's going to make James Harden's life on defense very difficult. He's going to call him up on so many. He's going to call Harden's man up every single time, whether it's Derek Jones Jr. or whoever. He's going to call him up every single time, and that's going to be difficult. And then he always makes Zubac's life completely difficult.
Right.
Like, and just completely takes him off the floor. And if that happens, they can go with Plumlee. They can go with Tice if they want to. They've played decently well with both of them. But the Clippers' small ball units have not been as good this season. They've been fine. They've been like +5 per 100 possessions, but they used to be +10 per 100 possessions in the last couple of years that the Mavs have played them, and even the years where they didn't. And so I'm fascinated to see where they decide to go with that. And I think that the Mavericks will be able to stay big. I think that they will with Gafford at times, but I think they will go to the Maxey lineup and space the floor and do all that and get space for Luka and Kyrie and all them, because those lineups have been good too. The Maxey PJ lineups have been really good, but I think they still need to be able to keep that size for stretches and not have to just completely solely rely on the Maxey PJ lineups.
Especially because we know what the size does to opposing defenses, right? That vertical element, that when Luka's in that place, it makes him even more unguardable. So yeah, that size is going to be super helpful in giving you another thing to throw out there and make Ty Lue and the Clippers' life more difficult.
Another question I'm kind of asking about this series is, how does James Harden change the Clippers? In watching some games recently, like watching some Clippers games and rewatching some Mavs Clippers ones, his pick and roll stuff with Zubac is pretty game changing for them. The Clippers just did not have somebody like that when the Mavs played them before. They didn't have somebody that just like spam pick and roll over and over and over again. And Harden can do that. Can do that with Zubac very well this season. Zubac's averaging a career high in points because of Harden, like specifically because of him. And the Clippers used to be just, all right, we're gonna take a bunch of jump shots. If our jump shots don't go down, then we don't win. They used to be what the Suns are right now. Their offense can be awesome, but they gotta be able to hit those stand-up jumpers. Now they have this other element of a pick and roll threat with Harden and Zubac. But does Zubac play? That's the other question, is like what we asked before. And so, but I think James Harden is kind of in the way that Kyrie is the big like swing piece for the Mavericks and how much he can affect the game. I think that James Harden is that for the Clippers.
Right. In addition to the ways in which, as you compare it to the Suns, right? What was the question that the people asked about the Suns since they made those trades or the trade for Bradley Beal, right? Who's going to be the point guard? Do they have a point guard? Yeah. That was a question that was somewhat relevant when it came to these Clippers. They definitely have a point guard, right? Like, they have somebody that's able to initiate offense and move the ball around and distribute it. And that changes things as well. But I thank you for allowing me to have the low-hanging fruit. Will James Harden do that thing that people always talk about James Harden doing? Is also an element of this, right? Like, will he be quote unquote playoff James Harden, hashtag derogatory, right? Like, that's, I mean that in all the worst ways, because we've seen him. And even though oftentimes it typically happens second, third round of the playoffs, right? Like, the way that this West is, it could happen in the first round where he is not a factor, where he withers at times. And that can make a big swing in these series as well.
Yeah. I don't know. We've seen Harden play well in first rounds in the past. It usually happens like in the second or third round, where he just when it comes down to a game, like the game to decide the series, then he melts down in those games. But you can't just think that, James Harden is a dumpster fire in the playoffs, because he hasn't been. He's been he won 2 games basically by himself for the Sixers last year, where he scored 40 in both of them. And so I think we can't just overlook James Harden and say, he's nothing. There's nothing there. For him, I've seen a lot of people ask this question for the Mavericks is, well, who guards Harden? If you've got PJ on Kawhi and if you've got Derek Jones Jr. on Paul George, who gets Harden? The question doesn't really matter that much. I actually think that they probably start Derrick Jones Jr. on Harden because he's the one initiating offense. And in today's NBA, there's not as much like one-on-one, and then none of the matchups change. Like the matchups on defense change in an instant there. And so I think Harden is a big swing piece, the same way Kyrie was that we talked about at the beginning. I think Harden can be for the Mavericks. And so coming up, let's talk about the rest of the West. What does it look like right now? How does it stand? What's the Mavericks' path? Where do the other teams land? We'll talk about the standings in the West and how the playoffs kind of rolled out coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Quiiiz. Quiiiz daily fantasy made easy. You can go to Quiiiz and see what's available for you. You can check out some of the Rangers stuff. You can check out to see what's available for the Rangers. There's nothing right now because the Rangers are playing currently. But go see what's available on Quiiiz. And all you have to do is go to prizepicks.com, pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, and watch the winnings roll in. March is over, but the biggest moments in the MLB as well as NBA are just kicking off right now. So go check out prizepicks.com, see what you got right there. The playoffs, this will be super fun for the playoffs. I'm very excited to see some of this PrizePicks stuff. So you just pick Luka, 30.5 points or so, more or less on that. Kyrie, 26.5 points, more or less on that. Use that promo code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LOCKEDONNBA. All right, Reggie. I got one more question, Mavs Clippers, and then we'll get into the West standings and we'll talk about the playoff setting and all that.
Let's get it.
How will guarding Kawhi Leonard be different for the Mavericks this season? Because I have so many memories of 2020 and 2021 of Seth Curry doing his best against Kawhi Leonard and Rick Carlisle just looking down the bench at Maxey and going, "My guy, I know you're a 4-5 and Kawhi is a 3-4 and he is very good, but we just need you to just pick him up and just do your best, man. Like just do your best." And Maxi Kleber was the main defender on Kawhi Leonard. And Kawhi Leonard had one of the greatest playoff series, I don't know, maybe of all time against the Mavericks in that second year, where he just went completely off, dominated them in that game 7. I mean, it was literally a masterful performance from Kawhi Leonard. He gets all the credit for it in that run. 45 points in the game 6, by the way, my bad on that one. But 32 points. He shot 61% from the field, 43% from 3, almost 90% from the free throw line on 7 free throw attempts a game in that series. He also had 4.5 assists, 8 rebounds. He was insane. He was insanely good in that series. And I think that the Mavs defending Kawhi with an actual wing instead of like praying and putting Maxey or like honestly Seth Curry on him is huge.
Yes, absolutely. Like, and with still the understanding he's going to get his in some ways, but don't have to make it nearly as easy. Just all right. Let's be nice. But buddy, my brain went to bad places. I apologize. So just want to, but no, you're 100% right.
We're better now.
Yeah. Trying to be every day, but having more options, more reasonable options to throw at a guy like that is always a good thing, and making it difficult on him is going to be huge, including having the backstops of the bigs. It's another reason why having those bigs is going to be important. Having those backstops, even though he can eat in the mid-range, making sure that getting downhill is not as easy and getting those easy buckets at the rim is not available. In addition to having guys that's going to be able to funnel him in the proper ways and like be able to match the size, but also the athleticism in some ways, shape, or form.
And that's another reason why it's important to be able to stay big sometimes in this series, is because like the Clippers don't drive to the rim that much. They are like a very jump shooting team. Paul George has been awesome from 3 this season. James Harden will get to the rim every once in a while, but it'd be great to take that option away from them and make them just take all those mid-range jumpers and then just try to like, all right, beat us on an island. Go ahead. Like try and beat us on an island, because Luka's going to be on the other end beating you in all kinds of different ways, because the Clippers, like their 3 stars collectively, all do all the things that Luka does, if you think about it, right? Like offensively. Yeah. Because you've got the pick and roll stuff, like Harden and Luka can both do that, but then you've got the jump shooting, 3-point shooting, like, scoring. Like Luka can do all the things that those 3 stars can do. It takes all 3 of them to get at least all the types of things that they can all do. Right. None of them can do all the types of things Luka can do, which makes him so dangerous, which is why he played them so well in those series before. So those are my questions about Mavs Clippers. Slightly and I will answer some of those questions later on. I have a bunch more that I didn't ask. The playoffs are set pretty much though. The play-in will start in the West. We've got in the play-in Pelicans, Lakers, Kings, Warriors. That Pelicans, Lakers is the 7-8. Kings, Warriors is the 9-10. How are you feeling about those two matchups? Anyone that stick out to you as like, oh, the Warriors punting because they could have still gotten 8 today. The Warriors punting today and just going straight for 10 was wild to me because they just sat everybody.
I don't know what to make of that, in all honesty, because in theory, you would think about that Warriors team and you go, hey, man, you still have a possibility. That's a team that is, I guess they do have some younger assets in there, so I don't want to, but that's a team that has aged. Their core has aged even more. Like, you got to save up your efforts or your energies to be able to shoot your shot in a big way. I just find that to be an incredible way to go about this. However, that with all that being said, I imagine there's some TV executives somewhere that are like, God bless, have an opportunity to get both of them in now, right? Both of them being the Lakers and the Warriors.
Warriors Kings was the 3-6. The Kings were the 3 and the Warriors were the 6 last year. That was the 3-6 and it went 7 games. And now it's going to be the 9-10 in the West. Like, the West comes at you fast, man. Like,
God bless the Kings too, but ain't nobody trying to see y'all. Right? Like, again, I say that with all sincerity. I enjoy watching the Kings play. Ain't nobody trying to see y'all, right? Ain't nobody trying to see y'all. The Pelicans, the way that they've played of late, like, they might mess around and make some TV money happen,
The Pelicans Lakers is wild because they literally just played the last game of the season and the Lakers destroyed them in this game. And so maybe the Pelicans just held back because they were going to be the 7 anyway, I guess. But they could have been 6 if they won, and they just didn't. And so I'm fascinated in that game. I think the Lakers destroy them again, but it's hard to beat a team twice like that. And the Pelicans are such you saw it in the Mavs. The Mavs 4 matchups against the Pelicans this season was like a classic example of what the Pelicans are. Some days they beat your ass, and some days they get their ass beat. Like, it's like literally they played 2 games, and I was in New Orleans for one of them. Or for both of them. And the Mavs destroyed in the first game and got destroyed in the second. It's like, they're such a weird team, this Pelicans team.
I will say, the disappointing thing about the Pelicans falling into the play-in on the final day of the season, I was really getting used to the idea of getting a chance to see a more focused Zion Williamson in a full series in the playoffs for the first time.
One game. And they can win.
They can win. It's no longer guaranteed. And if you're standing aside or across rather from the 21-year veteran and his opportunity to keep adding to his legacy, bring that word back up. Good luck. Good luck.
Shout out to the radio guy bringing out the word legacy like several times. This episode. Just so on brand. Just so on brand for this.
You're welcome.
Oh, the rest of the West is set though. The play-in games. The Thunder are the number 1 seed. The Nuggets are number 2. The Wolves will play the Suns for the 3-6. That one is a fascinating series. Obviously, the Mavs and Clippers will play 4-5. That Wolves-Suns series is wild to me because Cat just came back. So Karl-Anthony Towns is back for this. He'll have a week off. And, man, the Suns, though, they've been such an up-and-down team, but they finished 6th. I just want to take a second, though. The Mavs finished ahead of the Suns. Like, we cannot forget that this season. That
is correct.
all the stuff that they talked, all the Bradley Beal, KD, all that. Like, they made those big trades, went all in, did all this, got Eric Gordon, got the whatever, and the Mavs still finished better than them. I just
don't forget Royce O'Neal. Gotta put Royce.
Great pickup for them.
Make sure Royce O'Neal's put in there.
But yeah, no, Mavs finished ahead of them, and I just like to feel good about that for a second.
That's right.
That Suns Wolves series though is gonna be fascinating. I could see that easily going 7.
Easily. Like we get a situation where the Wolves defense is a monster, and the Suns offense, at least in theory, can't be a monster, right? Sign me up for that. I also think someone pray for Yusuf Nurkic, because that's a lot of bigs to be dealing with, dog. Like, that's go with God, man.
Over under $10,000 in fines for Nurkic during this series. He just got $2,000 like just the other night.
I feel like he'll rein himself in.
No way. There's no way.
Give me the under.
I'm going over 10,000. I'm going over 10,000 for him. The Mavs path. Let's end here. The Mavs path. Mavs Clippers. If the Mavs do beat the Clippers in that 4-5, their next matchup would be against the Thunder. And so the Mavericks really punted this Mavs Thunder game, which we have not mentioned at all because there's no need to mention anything that happened in that Mavs Thunder game. I watched it. I saw it all. You probably watched it listening at home, but
it was a man named Fudge, and he was dunking sometimes, you know? Hey, full recap. You're welcome. That's not what happened?
That's a man named Fudge. I don't know why that sent me so hard. There's a man named Fudge.
There is. On the
Mavs would play the Thunder in the second round. How do you feel about a potential Mavs Thunder matchup in round 2?
I like it, right? Like the size, we're talking about being big. That size distinction showed up in a big way once you made that trade. That's a place where you can absolutely take advantage of a Thunder team. I mean, I understand we've been talking about how young they are. They've done some things in the regular season to kind of quell some of those doubts for me personally. However, you got to show up and show it, right? And so knowing that this team has more experience, at least at the top for the Mavs, and they have ways in which you can obviously see the differences in the ways that there's going to be an opportunity to attack. That works well, especially when you consider the alternative of what could have happened. Maybe that's how you have to look at things in the West because of how crazy the West is. The alternative does not necessarily make me feel as good as what you got in this situation, the path that's laying before you in the second round.
And there's like a good chance the Thunder will play the Pelicans, Lakers. They'll play one of the Pelicans, Lakers, Kings, or Warriors. They're going to play one of the Warriors or Lakers, probably. I mean, maybe the Kings. And like, those are not super easy teams. Like this is not the normal, this is not the normal 1-8. Even the East, like the 1-8 is Celtics versus probably one of Sixers or Heat. And now that's kind of wild too to think about. That's your first round matchup. This is not your like last year's first round matchup. It's wild to me. And yeah, I'm fascinated to see how that goes and how the Thunder handle a first round matchup, because that'll inform how they could potentially handle a second round one. But the Mavs have to take care of the Clippers. We'll have all kinds of stuff this week. I have tons of preview content with myself, Darian Vaziri from Locked On Clippers. Go over to Locked On Clippers and just comment "Go Mavs." Just go Mavs. Just do that real quick on Locked On Clippers, and we'll be back tomorrow, guys. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom. Mavs Clippers round 3. Luka revenge. Kyrie stepping up.